Hi everyone! This is how I created liquid effects over text or over any image. So first I began by making a text layer and I just typed the words water to be simple. And then I put it in a pre-composition so that later on I can go into it and change media as I want. I also created a solid layer. So from here on, I started placing effects. Here I'm searching up the effect for fractal noise, which I placed onto the solid color layer. And it gives you sort of like a cloudy render sort of look. You want to make sure that the fractal type is basic and the noise type is soft linear. So for the contrast, you want a high value, like I put 900 so that you can clearly tell which is dark and white. And the brightness increases or decreases the size of what later becomes liquid. I unchecked uniform scaling under transform so that I could play with the size of the blobs. And I'm also adjusting complexity, which sort of accounts for the blurriness of the blobs. It makes it look way more like a liquid shape. And then I started playing with some moving transformations, so I clicked on the stopwatch for sub offset to kind of change the appearance and set keyframes. And I also repeated this with evolution. Finally, I did this with offset turbulence so that I could create the appearance of liquid that's sort of like sliding down the surface. So you can see that in the playback. Okay, here I'm just adjusting the composition time to be a little shorter so we can fit as needed. And then I moved on to placing effects on the media layer. The first effect I used was called vector blur. And for the type of vector blur, I used direction fading. I'm adjusting the amount of vector blur. The lesser the value, the more inverted it looks. And the greater the value, it looks more like it's spreading light out farther. And I'm also playing with the angle offset so that like the shadow looks like it's in a different place. For the revolutions, this kind of like increases the, I guess, like resolution in a way of the text. I kept it low for this effect. And the most important thing is that for vector map, you change it to the solid layer that you have. And for the source, you want effects and masks. So that kind of like allows the liquid blobs you placed on the solid layer to be placed on top of the media layer. Now it actually looks sort of like water. I'm just changing the amount of it to change how much of the liquid is shown on the screen. So for higher values, you have more of the screen that like appears to have the liquid. I decided on a map softness of 24. I'm placing a second effect on the media layer called compound blur. Again, it's important to map it to the solid layer and to have its source as the effects and masks. And I'm playing around with the maximum blur to change how well the light and dark parts blend. So when I make it really high, it looks more opaque, which you might want for like frosted glass effects maybe. So this is what it looks like when both layers are turned on. So I'm going into my media file or media layer and placing an image above the text so I can change what the effect is set on. This is a photo from one of our badminton games of someone else who happens to be taking photography. So voila, it changed. But this isn't enough because you notice that even in the areas that the liquid is not on, the photo still appears blurry. So we're going to try to change that. How do you fix a problem like this? I ended up duplicating my media layer and then I deleted both effects on it so that it's just the regular image itself. I also duplicated my solid layer. And then I set the track matte for the new media layer to the copy of the solid layer. This was sort of the opposite of what I wanted. It wasn't an option in the track matte, but eventually I figured out that if you go to help and search up Luma, there's an option for matte with layer above, Luma inverted matte, which allows you to keep the blurry parts on the liquid, the black areas, and retain the clarity in the non-liquid areas. I'm just making some final adjustments so that it looks sort of realistic. Thank you!